When it comes to gaming on computers, Windows is the platform of choice. But why is that? Would Macs be a viable platform if people just made games for them? A lot of people would just flat out answer no, but why? So today at GameRanks, we're going to ask the question, why do Mac computers suck for gaming? Now let me say this right off, this isn't going to be PC versus Mac because we use Macs. A good chunk of our staff prefer them for non-gaming tasks, but they don't game on them. And it really makes a lot of sense because they're not particularly designed for that. A Mac is typically not a very upgradable machine. And if you game on computers, you're often looking for the next piece of hardware that you need for the next generation of games. Frankly, technology moves forward very fast and gaming typically keeps pace. But if you go in a little bit deeper, it's a little bit more complicated than that. You see, back in the day, I mean way back in the day, the early 80s to be exact, the Mac actually had a reputation for having the best games on it, and PC had more of a reputation for a functional device, as in spreadsheets, word processing, and other office-related functions. And in truth, that was the market that computer companies wanted to corner, the enterprise market, or business. So in 1983, Apple hired the president of Pepsi-Cola, John Sculley, to be their new chief executive officer. They brought him in to achieve a much more serious view with the business community and expand what people perceived as the function of the Mac computer beyond simply learning and fun. Basically, they wanted to be taken more seriously. So under his direction, Apple actually threatened to pull their ads from magazines like Macweek and Macworld if they didn't cut down coverage on games and charge game companies a bit extra for ads. What they wanted to do is minimize the importance of gaming in the Apple culture, which was still in its infancy. We all know about Mac culture and PC culture and Android culture and iPhone culture, and these are all very carefully curated by the companies that are behind them. Apple really didn't like the idea that people were asking for Macs in offices and being denied them because they had a reputation for being a platform they might use to fool around on work time. You know, play games. But over the next few decades, both IBM and Microsoft, the people behind the hardware and software that people knew as a PC, began to realize that productivity software really isn't that hardware intensive. And in that business climate, when you buy a PC and it's used mainly for office purposes, you don't really need a new PC for quite a while. That also goes for the operating system. Windows wasn't selling a lot of new enterprise copies. If you work in an office, they're always behind on hardware and software. Frankly, they don't need new equipment and software because it all does what it's supposed to do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And with Apple's efforts to serious things up and minimize the importance of gaming, it kind of left a gap in the market. MS-DOS, which is Microsoft's command line-based operating system, was being increasingly used for gaming, even as Windows took over. The reason is that DOS allowed direct access to most of the computer's hardware. Windows, on the other hand, used a protected memory model, which kind of restricted the access to video cards, keyboards, mice, sound devices, and generally made it harder to program a game for Windows. Now, being Windows was their flagship product, they definitely wanted to change that. So in the mid-90s, there was a big rush to create APIs, that's application programming interfaces, that gave you better access to the hardware and made it much simpler to program a game for Windows. So by the time Microsoft had gotten to Windows 95 OS R2, which stands for OEM Service Release 2, basically the version of Windows they provided to companies that built and marketed computers, DirectX was actually a component of Windows, meaning Windows now had an evolving API that allowed you to access the hardware necessary to create multimedia applications and, more importantly, games. The DirectX team also went on to create the popular Xbox gaming console, which you may remember we went into detail on in another video. Anyway, gaming was actually a big reason why computers were being brought into homes, because now the entire family was interested in a computer. The parents leaning more on productivity applications, while the kids obviously leaning more towards gaming. This was a really important time for computers because the cost of advanced computer machinery was entering a range that would make families much more receptive of it. Meanwhile, Mac had kind of been languishing since they had tried to change focus. They were kind of riding a wave of people that were enjoying their computers for a specific reason, and then they decided they really wanted to shift gears. Yes, they had a reputation for being fun, but they didn't want it because they thought that they could make more money without being fun. As it turns out, that sold a lot of computers in the 90s, and has ever since. And so it created a situation where PCs held the majority of the market share while Macs did not. And when you couple that with the fact that PCs were now seen as the gaming machine, and Mac computers just weren't, business people looking to invest money in things that they thought would make them more money were asking why the PC was doing so much better. Okay, well, the machine that has a focus on gaming is selling way better, so people want to play games, so we should make more games. But where should we make more games? Oh, probably where people are playing them. And something that starts with a simple decision of changing your focus over the course of several decades avalanches into more of a market condition. People stop seeing your product as the place to buy games, and people are buying more and more games. Game publishers pick up on this and want to put games where people play them, so they put more games on the PC, making it so that the PC is even more so the obvious choice for gamers on account of the game famine that's pretty much going on the Mac. Time passes and this cycle continues, and more the purposes of the machines diverge. The Mac now appeals to a certain kind of person, and so does the PC. And as you obviously know, they are two different kinds of people. But some of those people aren't that different. Some people like the aesthetic of the Mac and the operating system better, but really want to play games. Now, Apple really hasn't capitalized on that because a gaming Mac doesn't exist. At this point, the market for playing games on the Mac, especially AAA games, is just tiny. The only way you can game on Mac is to put Windows on it and use adapters to plug a graphics card into it. Now, it's important to note that Apple actually does understand this. They have learned their lesson, but it's just too far down one path to start walking backwards again. Or at least it is for now. However, look what they did with the iPhone. They created a platform that had the hardware in it to run games and made it easy to make those games for it, and wildly succeeded. Frankly, Microsoft, their chief competitor in PCs, has got nothing on Apple in the mobile market. On top of that, really it took a very long time for a legitimate competitor to evolve, and it's because they knew their consumers at this point. They knew they were going to be selling to people who would want to play games. The lessons they learned by not making a product that the people who were buying their product would want could be applied, and they worked. But that doesn't change the perception of their computers. People just don't think about Macs when they think about gaming. I certainly don't, and because of that, there's no reason really to try to emphasize gaming in them, which makes them bad machines for gaming. And it's all cyclical, unless some major effort that is going to be very expensive is put into creating Macs for gaming, and lots of money is spent rebranding them as a good gaming machine. It's not gonna change. Gamers are just gonna say that Macs suck, and for gamers, they do suck. And that's not an attack on Mac computers, it's just the truth. They aren't gaming machines, and they aren't trying to be. Are we ever going to see that change? Well, that really depends on Apple and what they want to do. But at least now you know why. It's not just that a machine sucks, it actually goes back decades and is rooted in business decisions and culture that has been carefully curated by all the different horses in this race. If you ask me, it's actually pretty interesting. If you agree, we'd really appreciate it if you click that like button. Also, if you have any input on the subject, why don't you get down in the comment section. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of very heated discussion on this video, so I'll see you there. If you're not currently subscribed to GameRanks, now's a great time too, because we upload new videos like this one every single day of the week. The best way to see them first is of course a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video, and we will see you next time here on GameRanks.